I slapped the Mafia boss in public for my friend. He smiled and said, "Finally, someone real. Subscribe now, or this might be our last meeting. Follow, comment, and share to stay connected. Don't miss out. Let's dive in." The crack of Natalie's palm against Vittorio Salvatore's face echoed through Russo's bistro like a gunshot, silencing every conversation, freezing every server mid-step. For one impossible heartbeat, the entire restaurant held its breath. Natalie's hand stung, vibrating with the impact, but she didn't lower it, didn't step back, didn't apologize. Her chest heaved, fury blazing through her veins, so hot it burned away the fear that should have paralyzed her. Because fear was a luxury she couldn't afford, not when Mara stood behind the bar, tears streaming down her face, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Vittorio Salvatore's head had snapped to the side from the force of the blow. Now, slowly, agonizingly slowly, he turned back to face her. His cheekbone was already reddening, a perfect handprint blooming across skin that probably hadn't been touched without permission in a decade, maybe longer. The man was a monument to controlled violence. 6'3" of tailored Italian suit and predatory grace, with dark hair slicked back from a face that could have been carved from Carrara marble. All sharp angles and unforgiving lines. His eyes, though. God, his eyes. They were the color of smoke over ice, gray and penetrating, the kind of eyes that saw through flesh and bone, straight into the desperate, terrified truth people tried to hide. Those eyes were currently fixed on Natalie with an intensity that made her knees threaten to buckle. The two men flanking him, mountains of muscle stuffed into expensive suits, undoubtedly armed, moved forward with synchronized precision. Their hands disappeared inside their jackets, reaching for weapons that would end this confrontation permanently. But Vittorio raised one hand. Just one. A simple gesture, barely more than a twitch of his fingers. His bodyguards froze instantly, hands still inside their jackets, bodies coiled like springs waiting for the release command that would unleash hell. The silence stretched. Natalie could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears, could smell the burnt espresso from the machine behind the bar mixing with the expensive cologne that radiated from Vittorio, something dark and woody that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Then Vittorio did something that made the fear crystallize into something sharper, more dangerous. He smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It didn't reach his eyes or soften the hard line of his jaw. It was the smile of a predator who'd just discovered prey that might actually put up a fight, and found the prospect interesting. He lifted his hand, the same hand that had stopped his men from putting bullets in her brain, and touched his reddening cheek with long, elegant fingers. His movements were deliberate, almost theatrical, as if savoring the sensation of pain, studying it like a scientist examining an unexpected anomaly. "Finally," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. "Someone real." The words hung in the air, nonsensical and terrifying in equal measure. Natalie's mind raced, trying to process what was happening, trying to understand why she was still breathing when everyone in Boston knew what happened to people who disrespected Vittorio Salvatore. The stories were legend. Businessmen who disappeared after refusing his protection, rival gang members found in the harbor wearing concrete shoes, witnesses who suddenly developed amnesia or stopped breathing altogether, and she just slapped him, in public, in front of his men in a room full of witnesses. "Lily," Mara's voice cracked through the silence, high and desperate. "Oh God, Lily, what did you do?" Natalie, who'd gone by Lily since childhood, a nickname from her late mother, didn't turn around, couldn't turn around, because Vittorio Salvatore's gaze held her captive as surely as if he'd wrapped his hands around her throat. "What I should have done the moment he walked through that door," Natalie said, forcing the words past the constriction in her chest. Her voice shook, but it didn't break. "Nobody talks to my friend like that. Nobody humiliates her and throws money in her face like she's garbage." 20 minutes earlier, Natalie had been wiping down tables, counting down the minutes until her shift ended. Her feet ached. She'd been on them since 6 that morning, pulling a double shift because Mara needed the evening off to meet with a debt collector. except Mara never made it to that meeting, because Vittorio Salvatore had arrived instead. He'd walked in like he owned the place, which Natalie supposed he probably did in some indirect way. Everyone in the North End paid tribute to the Salvatore family, whether through protection money, kickbacks, or debts that could never quite be repaid. Mara's debt was supposed to be simple. $50,000, borrowed 8 months ago when her mother's cancer treatment exceeded what insurance would cover. The family had promised reasonable terms, 6% interest, payment plans that seemed manageable. But debt with the mob was never simple. The interest had compounded. Hidden fees appeared. Suddenly, $50,000 became $70,000, then $90,000. Mara had been paying every spare dollar, working herself to exhaustion, barely sleeping, barely eating, and it still wasn't enough. Tonight, Vittorio had come to collect in a different way. He'd approached the bar where Mara was polishing wine glasses, her hands shaking so badly the glass had nearly slipped from her fingers. Natalie had been close enough to hear every word, close enough to see Mara's face drain of color until her freckles stood out like drops of blood on snow. "Eva Bianchi," Vittorio had said, using Mara's full legal name like an accusation. "Your debt has become tiresome." "I'm trying," Mara had whispered. "I'm paying every week, I just need a little more time. Time is a commodity I no longer wish to extend." Vittorio had reached into his jacket, and for one horrible moment, Natalie thought he was reaching for a gun. Instead, he'd pulled out a small velvet pouch. He'd opened it slowly, deliberately, letting the contents spill across the polished bar with a cascade of crystalline sound. Diamonds. Dozens of them, each one catching the low light of the restaurant and fracturing it into rainbow shards. "Your debt," Vittorio had said, his voice carrying just enough to reach the nearby tables, "is paid in full." Mara had looked up, hope flaring in her eyes for one fragile second. Then Vittorio had continued. "Consider this severance pay. You're finished in Boston, finished in any city where my family has interests, which I believe covers most of the eastern seaboard. You have 48 hours to leave. If I see you after that, if any of my associates report your presence, the debt will be reinstated, with penalties." He'd smiled then, cold and terrible. "Substantial penalties. The kind paid in blood rather than money. Your mother is still alive, isn't she? Still receiving treatment at Massachusetts General?" The threat had been crystal clear. Mara had broken down completely, shoulders shaking, tears flowing freely. And Natalie had felt something inside her chest crack wide open. All the rage and frustration of years spent watching people with power crush people without it. All the helpless fury of her parents' death in an accident caused by a drunk driver who'd bought his way out of consequences. All the bone-deep exhaustion of working 3 jobs to put her younger brother through college. It had all converged into a single, white-hot point of absolute clarity. She'd walked across the restaurant floor with her hand already rising, her body moving before her brain could stop it with logical objections like, "He'll kill you," or "This will solve nothing," or "You'll only make it worse." And she'd slapped Vittorio Salvatore hard enough to snap his head sideways. Now, standing in the aftermath, Natalie watched emotions flicker across his face too quickly to identify. Surprise, definitely. Anger, possibly. But that strange smile remained, curving his lips in a way that made her stomach twist with something that wasn't entirely fear. "What's your name?" he asked. "Natalie Davis." She lifted her chin, refusing to show the terror making her hands shake. "And I don't care who you are or how much power you think you have. You don't get to destroy someone's life because they couldn't pay fast enough. Mara's mother almost died. She was desperate. She's been paying you back, working herself half to death, and you—" "Are you finished?" Vittorio interrupted, his tone conversational, almost amused. "No." Natalie took a step closer, which was possibly the stupidest thing she'd ever done. "I'm not finished. You want to punish someone? Punish me. I'm the one who hit you. Mara's done nothing except try to save her mother and survive your impossible terms. So, whatever consequences you're planning, whatever brutal message you need to send it through me. Leave her alone." Something flickered in those smoke-gray eyes. Something that looked almost like respect. Vittorio studied her for a long moment, his gaze traveling from her flushed face, down to her worn sneakers and back up again, cataloging every detail. The observation felt intimate, invasive, like he was peeling back layers she didn't know she had. Then he turned to Mara, who stood frozen behind the bar. "Miss Bianchi," he said, his voice losing its edge, becoming almost businesslike. "Your debt is cleared, no strings, no exile. You may stay in Boston. You may work wherever you choose. No one in my organization will contact you again." Mara's mouth fell open. What? Consider it a gift." Vittorio's gaze slid back to Natalie. "Inspired by your friend's passionate advocacy." He bent down then, graceful as a dancer, and began picking up the scattered diamonds. Natalie watched, confused, as he gathered them carefully and replaced them in the velvet pouch. When he straightened, he handed the pouch directly to Mara. "Sell these. Pay for your mother's treatment. Start fresh." Mara stared at the pouch like it might explode. Vittorio turned back to Natalie, and his smile shifted into something darker, more predatory. "As for you, Miss Davis." He reached into his inner jacket pocket, and this time Natalie's heart actually stopped. But he pulled out only a business card, thick, cream-colored stock with raised lettering. He held it out between two fingers. "I believe we have more to discuss, privately." Natalie didn't take the card. "I'm not interested in anything you have to say." "No?" His eyebrow arched. "Not even if it means ensuring your brother Marcus completes his education at Boston University without financial concerns? Not even if it means your friend Mara receives the best oncological care money can buy for her mother? Not even if it means you never have to work another double shift in a place that doesn't appreciate your loyalty or your fire?" The world tilted sideways. He knew about Marcus. He knew details about her life that she'd never shared with anyone except Mara. I make it my business to know things, Miss Davis." Vittorio tucked the card into her apron pocket, his fingers barely brushing the fabric, yet she felt the touch like a brand. 1425 Blackstone Manor. Tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock sharp. And if I don't come?" His smile widened fractionally. "Then I'll assume you don't care about the people you just risked your life to protect. Somehow, I don't think that's the case." He stepped back, adjusting his cuffs with deliberate precision. His bodyguards moved to flank him immediately, their hands finally emerging from their jackets, empty but ready. Vittorio paused at the door, looking back over his shoulder. "One more thing, Miss Davis. That slap, don't ever do it again." The threat should have been terrifying. Instead, the way his eyes lingered on her face, the way his voice dropped to something almost intimate, made it feel like a promise. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft chime that sounded obscenely cheerful. The restaurant erupted into chaos, customers talking rapidly, servers rushing to their tables, the manager emerging from his office with a pale, panicked expression. But Natalie stood frozen, her hand still stinging, Vittorio's business card burning like a coal in her pocket. Mara crashed into her, arms wrapping around her in a desperate hug. "Are you insane?" Mara sobbed into her shoulder. "He could have killed you. He could have killed both of us." "I know," Natalie whispered, watching through the window as a black SUV pulled away from the curb, tinted windows hiding whatever monster sat inside. "I know." But she was alive. They were both alive. And Mara's debt was cleared. The price for that miracle, though. The price Vittorio Salvatore would demand tomorrow at 7 p.m. That was the question that would keep Natalie awake all night. Her phone buzzed at 2:47 a.m., jolting her from the restless half-sleep she'd finally achieved. Unknown number. The message was short, typed in a formal, almost old-fashioned style. 1425 Blackstone Manor, tomorrow, 7 p.m. Come alone or Mara pays the price. V.S. Natalie stared at the screen until her vision blurred. The velvet pouch of diamonds sat on Mara's coffee table, winking in the darkness like malevolent stars. And Natalie understood, with cold, crystalline certainty, that her life had just been divided into before and after. Before she'd slapped Vittorio Salvatore. And after, when she'd walk into whatever trap he'd prepared and discover exactly what Someone real meant to a man who had everything except something genuine. She didn't sleep at all after that. The iron gates of Blackstone Manor opened silently, swallowing Natalie into a world she'd only glimpsed in magazines. The black SUV that had collected her at exactly 6:45 p.m. glided up a driveway lined with ancient oaks, their branches forming a cathedral ceiling overhead. Her hands were ice cold despite the warm June evening. The manor itself looked like something transplanted from Gothic Europe, all dark stone and tall windows that reflected the dying sunlight like watchful eyes. Security cameras tracked their movement, discreet but omnipresent. This wasn't just wealth. This was a fortress. The driver, a silent mountain of a man who hadn't spoken a single word, opened her door. Natalie stepped onto gravel that crunched too loudly under her worn flats. She'd agonized over what to wear, finally settling on a simple navy dress, the nicest thing she owned, purchased for job interviews that never quite panned out. Now, standing before doors that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe, she felt absurdly underdressed. The doors opened before she could knock. A woman in an immaculate black suit stood there, silver hair cut in a severe bob, eyes that missed nothing. "Miss Davis, Mr. Salvatore is expecting you. This way." The interior was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. Marble floors stretched endlessly, reflecting light from a chandelier that could probably fund a small country's GDP. The air smelled of expensive wood polish and something herbal. Rosemary, maybe. Everything gleamed with the kind of cleanliness that required an army of invisible staff. Natalie's footsteps echoed as she followed the woman through corridors lined with dark oil paintings. Ancestors, probably, their painted eyes following her progress with the same unsettling intensity as their descendant. They stopped before carved double doors. "Mr. Salvatore will see you now." The woman opened the door and stepped aside, her expression revealing nothing. Natalie walked into a library that stole her breath. Floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with leather-bound books surrounded her on three sides. The scent of old paper and ink filled the air, familiar and oddly comforting. A massive mahogany desk dominated the center, and behind it, silhouetted against tall windows overlooking moonlit gardens, sat Vittorio Salvatore. He didn't look up immediately. His head was bent over documents, a fountain pen moving across paper with precise strokes. The lamplight cast shadows that emphasized the aristocratic lines of his face, making him look like something from a Renaissance painting, beautiful and untouchable. Natalie waited, her heart hammering against her ribs. Finally, he capped his pen with a soft click and raised his head. Those smoke-gray eyes found hers across the space, and the impact was physical, a jolt of electricity that made her breath catch. He looked different tonight. Still impeccably dressed in a three-piece suit that probably cost what she made in 6 months, but somehow more human. The harsh fluorescent lighting of Russo's bistro had made him look like a marble statue. Here, in the warm glow of his study, she could see the faint scar bisecting his left eyebrow, the shadow of stubble along his jaw, the almost imperceptible fatigue around his eyes, and the red mark on his cheekbone, still there, still shaped like her hand. "Miss Davis." He gestured to one of 2 antique chairs facing his desk. "Please sit." It wasn't a request. Natalie crossed the room, hyper-aware of every sound, the rustle of her dress, the soft thud of her shoes against Persian rugs that probably dated back centuries. She sank into the chair, the velvet upholstery luxurious but offering no comfort. "Tea? Coffee? Something stronger?" His voice was smooth, controlled, giving nothing away. "No, thank you." Her own voice came out steadier than she'd expected. He nodded slowly, as if she'd passed some kind of test. Then he leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin, studying her with that unnerving intensity. "You're wondering why you're here. I know why I'm here. You're going to punish me for what I did." "Punish you?" He repeated the words slowly, tasting them. "Is that what you think? Isn't it?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "If I wanted to punish you, Miss Davis, you would never have left that restaurant alive." "No, I'm not interested in punishment." He paused, his gaze never leaving hers. I'm interested in you. The word sent a chill down her spine that had nothing to do with temperature. Let me be direct, Vittorio continued, rising from his chair with fluid grace. He moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back, silhouette framed by darkness beyond. I've been watching you for 3 weeks, long before last night's theatrical display. Natalie's stomach dropped. Watching me? You work 80-hour weeks across 3 jobs. You send money to your brother at BU every month, more than you can afford. You haven't bought yourself new shoes in 18 months. You read philosophy during your break shifts. Camus, currently. You're fiercely protective of your friends, recklessly so, as evidenced by your actions last night. Each fact landed like a blow. He'd been studying her, cataloging her life, learning her patterns. The violation of privacy should have enraged her. Instead, a different emotion stirred, something complicated and unwelcome. Why? She managed. Vittorio turned from the window, and the lamplight caught something in his expression, something raw and quickly hidden. Because genuine people are rare in my world, Miss Davis. Everyone wants something. Everyone calculates. Everyone performs. His jaw tightened. You didn't calculate. You simply acted. That kind of authentic courage? He trailed off, then seemed to catch himself. It's valuable. I'm not for sale. No. His smile was almost sad. Which makes you priceless. He moved back to his desk, but instead of sitting, he perched on its edge, closer now, close enough that she could smell his cologne, bergamot and something darker, leather and smoke. Here's what I'm offering, Natalie. May I call you Natalie? She didn't respond, which he took as permission. Mara's debt is cleared permanently. No strings, no exile, no threats. She's free. Her mother receives the finest oncological care available. Specialists from Sloan Kettering, experimental treatments, whatever is needed. All expenses covered indefinitely. Natalie's breath caught. And? Your brother Marcus completes his education debt-free. In fact, he receives a full scholarship through one of my family's charitable foundations. He'll never need to worry about tuition, housing, or expenses. What do you want in return? The words came out harsh, defensive. Vittorio's eyes held hers. You, here, as my executive assistant. Your assistant. Disbelief colored her voice. You'll manage my legitimate business operations, real estate holdings, investment portfolios, charitable foundations. You'll live here, at the estate. Your needs will be provided for. Salary, benefits, anything you require. Except my freedom. His expression didn't change. You'll be free to leave the estate with proper security. You'll have your own suite of rooms, privacy. But yes, Natalie, you'll belong to me in the ways that matter. Your time, your presence, your loyalty. That's not a job offer, that's ownership. Call it what you like. He pushed off the desk, moving closer, and Natalie's instinct screamed at her to stand, to maintain distance, but she forced herself to stay seated, to not show fear. But understand this, Mara's safety, Marcus's future, your friend's mother's life, all of it hinges on your answer. Accept, and they're protected. Forever. Refuse. He didn't finish, but his meaning was clear. Natalie's hands clenched in her lap. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a choice, a genuine one. You can walk out that door right now. I won't stop you. But everything I've promised, the protection, the care, the security, walks out with you. And Mara's debt? He tilted his head. It reactivates, with interest. You said it was cleared. It was, until you refused my offer. His voice remained calm, reasonable, which somehow made it worse. I'm a businessman, Natalie. Every transaction has terms. She stood then, anger overriding caution. You're a monster. Yes, he agreed without hesitation. But I'm a monster who keeps his promises, every single one. Accept my terms, and I swear on everything I hold sacred that the people you love will never want for anything. They'll be protected, provided for, safe from harm. Can you say the same if you walk away? The question hit like a physical blow because they both knew the answer. Natalie thought of Mara's tear-streaked face, of Marcus struggling with student loans, of the constant exhaustion that had become her normal, and she thought of what Vittorio was really offering. A cage, yes, but a gilded one that came with guarantees she could never provide on her own. "How long?" she asked quietly. "As long as I deem necessary." He watched her process that, then added, "Or until you convince me otherwise." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have." Something flickered across his face. Vulnerability, maybe, or loneliness so profound it had its own gravity. "I don't know what I'm looking for, Natalie, but I know I haven't found it yet. Maybe you're it, maybe you're not. Either way, I need to find out." She looked at him, really looked. Saw the expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the weapon holstered at his ribs. Saw the controlled violence in how he held himself. Saw the red mark on his cheek that proved he could bleed. And beneath it all, something else. Something hungry and hollow and desperately, dangerously alone. "I want it in writing," she said. "Every promise, every protection, legally binding." His smile was genuine this time, reaching his eyes. "Done. My attorney will have documents ready by morning. And I want to talk to Mara and Marcus whenever I want. Video calls, proof they're safe. Of course. And if I find out you've lied, if anything happens to them, if this is some kind of sick game." Her voice shook with barely contained fury. "I will find a way to destroy you. I don't care what it costs me." Vittorio stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. His hand lifted, and she tensed, but he only brushed a strand of hair from her face with unexpected gentleness. "I believe you," he murmured. "Welcome to your new life, Natalie Davis." The words felt like a door slamming shut. Or maybe, she thought as his fingers lingered against her cheek for one heartbeat too long, like a door opening onto something she couldn't yet name. Something that terrified her more than any threat he could have made. Natalie woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows she didn't remember falling asleep beside. For one disoriented moment, she thought she was dreaming. The silk sheets too smooth against her skin, the mattress too perfectly firm, the ceiling too high and ornate with its carved moldings. Then memory crashed back. The contract she'd signed at midnight, Vittorio's elegant signature beside her shaking scrawl. The silent escort to her quarters, a suite larger than her entire apartment, decorated in soft grays and creams that probably cost more per square foot than most people earned in a year. She'd collapsed onto the bed fully clothed, too exhausted for fear. Now, morning light revealed what darkness had hidden. Her suite wasn't just a bedroom, it was an apartment. Sitting room with a fireplace, bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people, a walk-in closet that made her laugh because she owned maybe 10 outfits total. Except the closet wasn't empty. Natalie stood, barefoot on heated marble floors, and stared at racks of clothing. Dresses, blouses, slacks, all in her size. Designer labels she recognized from magazine advertisements. Shoes arranged like art pieces, heels, flats, boots. Drawers revealed lingerie still wrapped in tissue paper, everything silk and lace and obscenely expensive. Her hands trembled as she touched a cashmere sweater he'd prepared for her. Before she'd even agreed, Vittorio had filled this closet with a wardrobe designed to transform her into someone who belonged in his world. The violation of it, the presumption, made her want to tear everything down. Instead, she showered in water that actually got hot, dried off with towels softer than anything she'd ever owned, and dressed in her own wrinkled clothes from yesterday. A small rebellion, but hers. Breakfast waited in her sitting room when she emerged. Fresh fruit, pastries that smelled like they'd been baked minutes ago, coffee in a silver pot. A young woman in staff uniform stood beside the cart, hands folded. "Good morning, Miss Davis. I'm Anna. I'll be assisting you during your stay. If you need anything, I need to know if I can leave this room." Anna's professional smile didn't waver. "Of course. You have access to the entire estate. Mr. Salvatore is expecting you in his study at 9. The entire estate except the exits, Natalie thought. But she thanked Anna and ate because she'd learned years ago that you couldn't fight on an empty stomach. At precisely 9, she found her way back to Vittorio's study. The door stood open. He sat behind his desk, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. His eyes tracked her entrance and he gestured for her to sit, continuing his conversation without pause. Natalie used the moment to study the room in daylight. The books weren't just for show. Worn spines, dog-eared pages, actual marginalia visible on volumes left open. A chess set sat on a side table, game in progress. Photos lined one shelf, but from this angle, she couldn't make out the faces. Vittorio ended his call and set the phone down with deliberate precision. You didn't wear the clothes I provided. They're not mine. Everything in that closet is yours, legally, per our contract. Buying me doesn't mean I have to dress like your doll. Something flashed in his eyes. Amusement, maybe. Fair enough. Though you'll need appropriate attire for the event tonight. What event? Charity gala, hospital fundraiser. You'll attend as my companion. He slid a folder across the desk. These are your actual responsibilities. Review them. Natalie opened the folder, scanning pages of dense text. Property holdings, investment portfolios, board positions at various companies and foundations. The legitimate face of the Salvatore empire. You want me to manage all this? I want you to understand it first, then improve it. He leaned back, watching her. You have a degree in business administration from Northeastern. You graduated summa cum laude despite working full-time. Your analytical skills are exceptional, your ethics are inconveniently strong, and you see patterns others miss. I'm not looking for a secretary, Natalie. I'm looking for someone who can think. She stared at him. You really did investigate everything. I investigate everyone who enters my orbit. The difference is most people want to be here. You don't. That makes you uniquely valuable. Or uniquely stupid. His laugh was unexpected, genuine, transforming his face into something almost boyish. Perhaps both. The next hours blurred into information overload. Vittorio walked her through his operations with surprising patience, the real estate developments that funded youth programs, the shipping company that employed 300 families, the investment firm that had somehow remained profitable through every market crash. This doesn't match your reputation, Natalie said, studying a report on affordable housing initiatives. What reputation? Mob boss, criminal empire, the man who makes people disappear. Vittorio's expression shuddered. I'm many things, Natalie. Some of them are exactly as dark as you imagine, but my family has survived 4 generations by understanding that power built solely on fear collapses eventually. We diversified, legitimized, the unsavory aspects of our business are necessary evils, not the foundation. Necessary for what? Protection, influence, survival. He held her gaze. This world doesn't run on idealism. It runs on power. The question isn't whether you participate. It's whether you shape it or let it shape you. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something cold passed over his face. Excuse me. He stood, taking the call as he moved to the window. When? His posture changed, shoulders tightening, jaw clenching. When he spoke again, his voice was ice. Increase security at all properties. Double the detail on Isabella, and find out who's leaking information. He ended the call and stood silent for a long moment, staring at the gardens beyond the glass. Problem? Natalie asked. Always. He turned back, and the man who'd patiently explained investment strategies was gone, replaced by something harder. The Moretti family is making moves on our territory. They've been quiet since Antonio died, but his cousin Luca is more ambitious, and apparently more reckless. How does that affect me? It means you don't leave this estate without security. It means you follow my instructions without question. And it means... He moved closer, his presence suddenly overwhelming. It means you're valuable leverage. Everyone in our world now knows you're under my protection. That makes you a target. I didn't ask for your protection. No, you asked for your friend's protection, your brother's. Your deal included your safety by default. I don't protect investments halfway. Investment. The word stung more than it should have. I'm not your property, Vittorio. No, he agreed, his voice dropping. You're something far more complicated, which is precisely the problem. He was close now, close enough that she could see the fine details of his face, the small scar through his eyebrow, the slight asymmetry to his features that made him interesting rather than classically handsome, the way his pupils dilated slightly as he looked at her. The gala is at 7, he said quietly. Anna will help you prepare. Wear something from the closet. This time, it's not a request. Where we're going, you need to look like you belong to me. Our enemies need to see that harming you would be unwise. And if I refuse, then you stay here, locked in your suite, while I attend alone. Your choice. It wasn't a choice at all, and they both knew it. That evening, Natalie stood before a full-length mirror, barely recognizing herself. The dress Anna had selected was midnight blue, elegant and understated, but it fit like it had been designed for her body specifically. Her hair was swept up, makeup subtle but transformative. She looked like she belonged in Vittorio's world. The thought made her stomach twist. A knock at the door. When she opened it, Vittorio stood there in a tuxedo that probably cost what she used to make in 6 months. He'd been handsome before. Now he was devastating. His eyes traveled over her slowly, and something heated flickered in their depths. You'll do, he said, voice rough. High praise. I don't give false compliments. He offered his arm. Ready? No? Good. Fear keeps you sharp. His smile was dangerous. Stay close to me tonight. Speak to no one without my permission. And Natalie? His fingers brushed her wrist. Trust no one, not even the people who seem friendly. Especially them. As they descended the grand staircase, Natalie felt the weight of what she'd agreed to settle over her shoulders like a cloak. She wasn't just playing a role. She was entering a world where every smile hid calculation, every conversation was a negotiation, and the man beside her, beautiful and lethal and impossibly complicated, held her life and the lives of everyone she loved in his elegant, blood-stained hands. The limousine waited outside, door open like a mouth ready to swallow her whole. Vittorio's hand pressed against the small of her back, guiding her forward. And Natalie stepped into the darkness, wondering if she'd ever find her way back to light. The ballroom glittered like something from a fever dream. Crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across marble floors, champagne flowing from fountains, women dripping in jewelry that could fund small nations. Natalie had never seen wealth like this. So casual and overwhelming it felt obscene. Vittorio's hand remained at the small of her back, possessive and warm through the thin fabric of her dress. Every eye in the room tracked their entrance, conversations pausing mid-sentence as Boston's elite registered the unfamiliar woman on Vittorio Salvatore's arm. Smile, he murmured against her ear. You look like you're walking to your execution. Aren't I? His fingers pressed slightly harder against her spine. You're walking into a room full of predators who respect only power. Show weakness, and they'll circle. Show strength, and they'll hesitate. Which do you prefer? Natalie lifted her chin and smiled, the expression feeling like glass cutting her face. Better, Vittorio said, approval warming his voice. They moved through the crowd like royalty, Vittorio exchanging greetings with men whose faces Natalie recognized from news reports. Politicians, CEOs, old money families who'd built Boston on backs they never acknowledged. Everyone wanted a moment of his time, a word, a connection to the power he represented. And everyone studied her with predatory curiosity. Vittorio. A woman approached, 60 and elegant, diamonds at her throat catching light. How lovely to see you. And who is this? Natalie Davis. Natalie, this is Margaret Ashford. She sits on the hospital board. Margaret's eyes were shark cold despite her warm smile. Davis. I don't recognize the name. Which family? I don't have a family, Natalie said evenly. Not the kind you mean. Oh. The single syllable dripped condescension. How? Refreshing. Vittorio does have eclectic taste. Vittorio's hand slid to Natalie's waist, pulling her closer. Careful, Margaret. I'm possessive of my investments. The older woman's smile sharpened. Of course. Enjoy the evening, dear. As she glided away, Natalie exhaled slowly. That was a test. Everything here is a test. You passed. Vittorio guided her toward the bar. Margaret's grandson owes me $2 million. She's reminding me she has social power while I have financial leverage. It's a dance. An exhausting one. Welcome to my world. They collected champagne. Natalie barely sipped hers while Vittorio didn't drink at all, she noticed, and made their circuit. Each introduction felt like a chess move, every conversation layered with meanings she struggled to decode. But she watched Vittorio work, saw how he calibrated his responses, when he showed warmth and when his eyes went cold. He was brilliant and terrifying. You're learning, he said during a rare moment alone on the balcony, the night air cool against her heated skin. Learning what? How to be a proper accessory? How to survive? He turned to face her, and the city lights behind him cast his features in sharp relief. You think I brought you here to show you off? I didn't. I brought you here to show you what you're protecting your friends from. Every person in that room has destroyed someone to maintain their position. Margaret's husband died under convenient circumstances when she found out about his affairs. Senator Bradley over there made 3 witnesses disappear before his trial. That philanthropist by the fountain runs one of the largest money laundering operations on the East Coast. Natalie's stomach turned. And you? I'm exactly what you think I am. The difference is, I don't pretend otherwise. His gaze held hers. They wear their respectability like armor. I wear my reputation like a weapon. Both get the job done. That's supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you understand why I need someone real, someone who sees through the performance. He stepped closer, and Natalie's breath caught. You hate what I am, but you understand why I am it. That's rare. Before she could respond, a commotion erupted inside. Raised voices, the crowd parting rapidly. Vittorio's entire demeanor changed in an instant, going from almost vulnerable to lethal in a heartbeat. His hand went to the small of his back where she knew he kept a weapon despite the metal detectors. Stay behind me, he ordered, already moving. They pushed through the crowd to find a man in an ill-fitting suit confronting Senator Bradley, voice slurred with alcohol and rage. You promised. You said if I kept quiet, my daughter would get the transplant. She died waiting, you bastard. Security converged, but the man pulled something from his jacket. Not a weapon. Photographs. He threw them at the senator's feet. She was 8 years old. 8! The crowd watched with the detached fascination of people who'd never truly suffered. Vittorio moved forward, and Natalie grabbed his arm without thinking. Don't. He looked at her hand on his sleeve, then at her face. Something flickered in his expression. Please, she whispered. There's another way. For an endless moment, she thought he'd ignore her. Then he signaled his own security. 2 men she hadn't noticed before materialized at his gesture. Escort Mr. Henderson, the man sobbed. James Henderson. Escort Mr. Henderson outside, carefully. Get him water and coffee. Vittorio's voice carried across the silent ballroom. And Senator Bradley, I believe we need to discuss your charitable contributions. Privately. The threat in those last words was unmistakable. Senator Bradley's face went pale. Vittorio, this isn't necessary? No, it's not, which makes it worse. Vittorio turned to the crowd, his smile cold enough to freeze. Ladies and gentlemen, please continue enjoying the evening. The hospital auxiliary appreciates your generous donations. The crowd slowly resumed motion, conversations restarting with forced normalcy. Vittorio guided Natalie back toward the exit, his men handling the situation with professional efficiency. In the limousine, silence stretched between them. Thank you, Natalie finally said. For what? For listening. For not. I don't know what you would have done, but thank you for choosing something else. Vittorio stared out the window, jaw tight. I would have had Bradley's campaign contributions audited, his family's medical foundation investigated, and every dirty secret he's buried exposed within 48 hours. The man would have been destroyed by the end of the week. But you didn't. No, I didn't. He looked at her then, and his expression was raw, unguarded. Because you asked me not to. Because something in your eyes made me want to be the man who could choose mercy over vengeance. The vulnerability in his admission stole her breath. That's dangerous, Natalie. You're dangerous. You make me want things I can't afford to want. Like what? Like being someone worthy of the way you looked at me just now. Like believing I could be more than what my father made me. His hand found hers in the darkness, fingers intertwining with desperate intensity. Like thinking maybe someone real could love someone like me. The confession hung between them, too honest, too raw. Natalie should have pulled away, should have maintained distance, remembered he was her captor, her enemy, the man who'd blackmailed her into this golden cage. Instead, she squeezed his hand back. I don't know what I feel, she whispered, but I know you're more than you pretend to be. I've seen it. They sat in charged silence the rest of the drive. At the estate, Vittorio walked her to her suite, something he hadn't done before. At her door, he paused. The man in the basement, the one you saw me interrogating. He sold information that got 4 of my people killed. One of them had 3 children under 10. Another was 2 weeks from retirement. Natalie met his eyes. What happened to him? He's alive. In prison, where he'll stay for the rest of his natural life. Vittorio's jaw tightened. I wanted to kill him. Every instinct screamed for it. But I remembered what you said that first night, about being a monster, and I chose the path that let me sleep. Do you? Sleep? Not often. Not well. His hand lifted, fingers ghosting along her cheek. But tonight, maybe I will. Because you looked at me like I was human. Not a monster. Not a king. Just human. He leaned closer, and Natalie's heart thundered. His breath was warm against her lips, champagne and something darker. More him. The kiss didn't happen. Instead, he pressed his forehead to hers, eyes closed, and just breathed. Good night, Natalie Davis. Sleep well in your cage. Then he was gone, disappearing down the hallway with that predatory grace, leaving her leaning against her door with her heart racing and her certainty crumbling. Inside, she found an envelope on her pillow. Her hands shook as she opened it. A photograph. Vittorio, years younger, laughing with a beautiful woman and a little girl with his eyes. They looked happy, whole, human. On the back, in his elegant handwriting, Sophia and Amelia. They made me better. You remind me I could be again. Natalie clutched the photograph. Tears she didn't understand burning her eyes. She was falling into something impossible, dangerous, and utterly inevitable. And the most terrifying part was she wasn't sure she wanted to stop. The gunshot shattered the pre-dawn silence, jerking Natalie from restless sleep. She bolted upright, heart slamming against her ribs, disoriented in the darkness of her suite. Another shot, closer, then shouting, harsh, urgent commands in Italian. Her door crashed open. Vittorio stood silhouetted against the hallway light, already dressed, weapon drawn. Blood spattered his white shirt. Get up. Now. We're leaving. Natalie scrambled from bed, still in the tank top and shorts she'd slept in. What's happening? The Morettis. They hit 3 of my warehouses simultaneously. This was a distraction. He grabbed her arm, pulling her into the hallway where 2 of his men waited, faces grim. They know you're here. They'll use you if they can. Terror crystallized into sharp clarity. This was real. Not a negotiation or a power play. Actual violence, actual danger. They moved through the manor at a run, Vittorio's hand ironed tight around her wrist. The elegant hallways she'd walked yesterday now felt like a maze designed to trap them. Behind them, more gunfire erupted. Glass shattered. Someone screamed. The safe room, one guard started. Compromised. They had inside information. Vittorio's voice was ice-cold fury. We go to the mountains. Radio ahead. They burst into the garage where 3 black SUVs idled, engines running. Vittorio shoved Natalie into the back seat and climbed in after her, barking orders in rapid Italian to the driver. The vehicle exploded forward, tires screaming. Through the rear window, Natalie watched the manor recede, saw muzzle flashes in the darkness, figures moving through shadows. "Your head down," Vittorio commanded, pushing her below the window line. His body covered hers, protective and suffocating. The convoy raced through empty pre-dawn streets, running red lights, weaving through traffic with terrifying precision. Every corner felt like it might be their last. Natalie's fingers dug into the leather seat. "Isabella, already secured. Different location. They're fine." Vittorio's breath was hot against her ear. "Just stay down." Something impacted the rear windshield. A bullet, the glass spider webbing but holding. Vittorio cursed, pulling Natalie tighter against him. "Faster," he growled to the driver. They didn't slow until the city disappeared behind them, replaced by winding mountain roads and dense forest. The sun was rising when they finally pulled up to a cabin that looked nothing like Blackstone Manor. Rough-hewn logs, isolated, surrounded by wilderness. Vittorio's men secured the perimeter while he pulled Natalie inside. The cabin was small, rustic, a single main room with a stone fireplace and minimal furniture. But it was warm, and it felt safe. Natalie's legs gave out. She sank onto the worn couch, shaking uncontrollably now that the adrenaline was fading. Vittorio knelt before her, hands framing her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, unable to speak. "Look at me, Natalie. Look at me." His thumb stroked her cheeks, gentle despite the violence still crackling around him. "You're safe. I've got you. You're safe." The words broke something in her. She collapsed forward, forehead against his shoulder, and let the tears come, great shuddering sobs born of terror and exhaustion and the surreal horror of the last hour. Vittorio held her, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other wrapped around her waist. He didn't speak, didn't offer platitudes, just held her while she fell apart. When the crying finally subsided, Natalie pulled back, wiping her face roughly. "Sorry. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. You're entitled to fear." "God knows I feel it." He stood, moving to the fireplace where someone had already laid a fire. He lit it with practiced efficiency. "We'll be here a few days, until I can neutralize the threat." "How do you neutralize people trying to kill you?" "Very carefully." His smile was humorless, and with extreme prejudice. Over the next hours, Natalie watched Vittorio transform. He made calls, gave orders, coordinated responses to the attack with brutal efficiency. This was the mob boss everyone feared, cold, calculating, ruthless. Men would die because of the commands he was issuing, and his voice never wavered. But when he ended the calls and turned back to her, something in his expression softened. "Hungry?" The question was so normal it almost made her laugh. "I don't think I can eat." "You should try." He moved to the small kitchen, rummaging through cabinets. "We might be here a while." They ate canned soup heated over the fire, sitting on opposite ends of the couch, the silence heavy with unspoken things. "Tell me about them," Natalie finally said. "Sofia and Emilia." Vittorio stared into the flames for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Sofia was a kindergarten teacher. We met at a charity event. She was there representing her school, asking for donations. She wasn't impressed by my money or my name. Actually told me I was wasting my wealth on frivolous displays of ego. His smile was genuine, painful. I fell in love with her in that moment. And Emilia? She had Sofia's kindness and my stubbornness. Terrible combination. His voice cracked slightly. She wanted to be an architect. Drew buildings constantly. Elaborate, impossible structures. She was 8 when... He stopped, jaw clenching. Natalie reached across the space between them, her hand finding his. "The bomb was meant for me," he continued, fingers tightening around hers. "A message from a rival family, but I was running late, and Sofia took Emilia to the car without me. I heard the explosion from inside the house. By the time I reached them..." He stopped, unable to continue. "I'm so sorry. I hunted down everyone involved. Took me 2 years. Some died quickly, others didn't." His eyes met hers, dark with old pain, I became the monster everyone believed I was. Because being human hurt too much. You're still human, Vittorio. Hurt doesn't erase that. Doesn't it? He pulled his hand away, standing abruptly. I've done things that would make you run screaming. Ordered deaths, destroyed lives, built an empire on fear and blood. What part of that is human? The part that saved that man at the gala. The part that's kept Mara and Marcus safe. The part that holds me like I'm precious when I'm terrified. Natalie stood too, closing the distance. The part that's capable of love, even after losing everything. They stood inches apart, the firelight casting shadows across his face. You're dangerous, he whispered. So are you. His hand rose, cupping her cheek with devastating gentleness. If I kiss you, Natalie, I won't stop. I can't promise restraint or nobility. I can only promise truth. I want you more than I've wanted anything in years, and that terrifies me. Her heart thundered. Then be terrified. I am too. The kiss was inevitable, fierce and desperate, tasting of fear and need. His hands tangled in her hair while hers clutched his blood-stained shirt, pulling him closer. It wasn't gentle. It was survival. Two people clinging to each other in the wreckage of their circumstances. They made love on the floor before the fire, urgent and consuming. And afterward, wrapped in blankets with his heart thundering beneath her ear, Natalie realized she'd crossed a line she could never uncross. She loved him. God help her, she loved Vittorio Salvatore. His phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He answered, his body going rigid. When he ended the call, his face was stone. They have Isabella. The pier stank of rotting fish and salt. Fog rolled off the harbor, thick enough to choke on. Natalie stood beside Vittorio, her hand hidden in his, both their palms slick with sweat despite the cold. 50 feet away, Isabella knelt on the wet concrete, hands bound, a gun pressed to her head. Even from this distance, Natalie could see the blood matting her dark hair. Vittorio! Luca Moretti's voice carried across the space. So good of you to come. And you brought your pet. How touching. Let her go, Antonio. This is between us. Is it? Moretti stepped into a pool of lamplight. 50-ish, expensive suit. The kind of smile that never reached his eyes. You killed my cousin. Destroyed 3 of my operations. Turned half my men against me. I'd say this involves everyone you care about. Vittorio's grip on Natalie's hand tightened painfully. Name your price. Your shipping routes, your waterfront properties, and her. Moretti gestured at Natalie. I want to see what broke the great Vittorio Salvatore. Made him soft. Never. Then your sister dies. Simple mathematics. The standoff stretched, tension coiling tighter. Natalie's heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Then everything exploded. Gunfire erupted from 3 directions. Vittorio's men emerging from cover, Moretti's guards returning fire. Isabella screamed. Natalie hit the ground as Vittorio shoved her down, his body covering hers. Stay down. But through the chaos, Natalie saw Isabella break free, saw her running, saw the man behind Vittorio raise his gun. Vittorio! Natalie screamed. He spun. The shot meant for his head caught his shoulder instead, spinning him sideways. Blood sprayed hot across Natalie's face. The shooter stepped into the light, and Natalie's world tilted. Dante. Vittorio's most trusted lieutenant. His face twisted with hatred. Should have died 3 years ago, boss. Sofia was just the beginning. But you survived. You always fucking survive. Vittorio struggled to his knees, clutching his bleeding shoulder. You. It was always you. Every betrayal, every leak, every attack. Dante smiled. All me. And now I take everything you built. He aimed at Natalie. Let's see if you survive this. Isabella crashed into Natalie from the side, momentum carrying them both down. The shot rang out. Isabella's body jerked, blood blooming across her chest. No! Vittorio's roar was inhuman. What happened next was barely human. Vittorio moved like death itself, wounded shoulder forgotten. His hands found Dante's throat, and he didn't stop until the light left his former friend's eyes. Sirens wailed in the distance. Vittorio cradled Isabella, blood everywhere, her breathing shallow. "Stay with me. Bella, stay with me." Natalie pressed her hands to the wound, tears streaming. "We need a hospital, now." His men were already moving, carrying Isabella to a waiting vehicle. Vittorio climbed in after, never letting go of his sister's hand. Natalie followed, covered in blood that wasn't hers, watching the only family Vittorio had left fighting for every breath. And understanding, finally, the true cost of loving a man like him. Everyone he loved paid in blood, including her. The hospital waiting room smelled of disinfectant and despair. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in sickly yellow. Vittorio sat motionless, elbows on knees, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Blood, Isabella's, Dante's, his own, had dried dark on his shirt. Natalie sat beside him, their shoulders touching. She'd tried to clean the blood from her face in the bathroom, but traces remained under her nails, in the creases of her palms. Evidence of how close they'd come to dying. Hours crawled past. Doctors emerged periodically with updates that meant nothing, still in surgery, complications, blood loss significant. Vittorio absorbed each report with a single nod, his face carved from stone. Dawn broke through the waiting room windows before the surgeon finally appeared, exhausted and grave. "She's alive, critical but stable." Vittorio's exhale was the only sign he'd been holding his breath. "Can I see her?" "Immediate family only. 10 minutes. I'm her brother." The surgeon nodded and led him away, leaving Natalie alone with Vittorio's remaining guards and the weight of everything that had happened. She should call Mara, Marcus, tell them she was alive. But her phone was somewhere back at the cabin, and exhaustion had turned her bones to lead. When Vittorio returned 20 minutes later, something fundamental had shifted in his expression. The careful control had cracked, revealing raw devastation beneath. He walked past Natalie without a word, heading for the exit. She followed, instinct overriding fatigue. In the parking garage, Vittorio stopped beside a black SUV, one hand braced against it, head bowed. His shoulders shook with silent sobs he'd been suppressing for hours. Natalie touched his back gently. "Vittorio, don't." His voice was wrecked. "Don't try to comfort me. Everyone I love dies or suffers, my wife, my daughter. Now Isabella, fighting for her life because I couldn't protect her, because I'm poison. That's not true." He whirled on her, eyes red-rimmed and wild. "Isn't it? You almost died tonight. You had Isabella's blood on your hands because she took a bullet meant for you, because being near me makes you a target." He stepped closer, towering over her. "You should run, Natalie. Get as far from me as possible while you still can." "I'm not running." "Why not? For God's sake, why are you still here?" "Because you're not poison." Her voice echoed off concrete. "You're a man who's been hurt and who hurts others to survive. But you're also the man who saved that father at the gala, who holds me when I'm terrified, who loved his family so completely their loss nearly destroyed you. That's not poison. That's human. I don't deserve your faith. Maybe not. But you have it anyway." She grabbed his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Isabella is alive. You're alive. I'm alive. We survived, Vittorio. Now we figure out what comes next." Something broke in him. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair, and let himself shake apart while she held him together. They stayed like that until security politely informed them they needed to move the vehicle. Back at the hospital, Natalie commandeered a private room and forced Vittorio to let a doctor treat his shoulder wound. The bullet had passed through clean, but infection was a risk. He endured the stitches without flinching, staring at nothing. "The Morettis are finished," he said flatly as the doctor bandaged him. "Antonio was already dead. Luca was arrested after the live stream. Their organization is in chaos. And Dante's betrayal runs deeper than I thought. He'd been planning this for years, since before Sofia died." Vittorio's jaw tightened. "He orchestrated the bombing, fed information to rivals, weakened my operations from the inside, all to position himself as my successor. But why? Because my father chose me over him. We were raised together. Dante was his godson. When my father died, Dante expected to inherit. Instead, everything went to me. His laugh was bitter. He spent a decade destroying me from within, and I never saw it. You trusted him. That's not weakness. In my world, it's fatal. Over the following days, a grim pattern emerged. With Vittorio emotionally compromised and Isabella unconscious, his organization needed leadership. Rivals sensed vulnerability. Attacks increased, small at first, testing defenses, then bolder. Natalie watched it unfold from her hospital vigil, helpless and frustrated. She'd made coffee runs, coordinated food deliveries, anything to feel useful. But the empire was crumbling, and Vittorio was paralyzed by grief and guilt. On the third day, she'd had enough. She found him in Isabella's room, holding his sister's unconscious hand. "You need to go handle your business," Natalie said firmly. "I'm not leaving her." "Then let me help. Teach me enough to make decisions in your absence. Your men need direction, Vittorio. The longer you're absent, the weaker you look." He looked up, and for the first time in days, something sparked in his eyes. "You want to run my empire? I want to keep it intact until you can. We're partners, remember? You said I was valuable. Prove you meant it." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You're serious." "Completely." That afternoon, Vittorio's lieutenants gathered in a private conference room. They looked skeptical when Natalie walked in, this civilian woman who'd been with the boss for barely 2 weeks. "Gentlemen," Vittorio said, his voice regaining its command, "Miss Davis speaks with my authority. You'll treat her directives as if they came from me directly. Is that understood?" Mutters of assent, though doubt lingered in their eyes. Natalie studied the maps and reports they'd brought, saw the patterns, saw the opportunities. "Here," she said, pointing. "They're hitting your weakest points, expecting retaliation. Don't give it to them. Reinforce here instead. Cut off their supply lines. Let them overextend, then collapse their support structure." Silence. Then the oldest lieutenant, a man named Marco, nodded slowly. "That could work." "It will work," Natalie said with more confidence than she felt. "Now show me your financial operations. Let's find vulnerabilities before our enemies do." They worked through the night, and slowly, grudgingly, Vittorio's men began to respect the woman who'd somehow tamed their untamable boss. When Isabella finally woke 4 days later, weak but alive, the first thing she saw was Vittorio and Natalie asleep in chairs beside her bed, hands intertwined between them. "About damn time you found someone," Isabella whispered, smiling despite the pain. Outside the hospital, enemies still circled. But inside this room, something new was being built, something that looked almost like hope. 3 months felt like 3 years. Natalie stood in Vittorio's study, her study now too, reviewing acquisition reports while rain hammered the windows. Her hand rested unconsciously on her stomach, still flat but not for much longer. She was 12 weeks pregnant. The test had been waiting on her bathroom counter 2 weeks ago, those 2 pink lines rewriting every certainty she'd clung to. She'd told Vittorio that same night, watched terror and wonder war across his face before he'd pulled her close and whispered, "I can't lose another child." "You won't," she'd promised, though neither of them could guarantee it. Now, with Vittorio detained in federal custody awaiting trial, Natalie was keeping that promise the only way she knew how, by refusing to let his empire collapse. The door opened. Isabella entered, moving carefully despite being fully healed. She'd been Natalie's right hand these past months, teaching her the unwritten rules of their world. "The Castellano family accepted our terms," Isabella reported. "They'll absorb 3 of our former operations, all legitimate fronts. Clean break. Good. That's the last of the violent operations divested." Natalie marked it on her master list. "What about the federal case?" "Our attorney says the evidence Dante left behind is working in our favor. Proof he framed Vittorio for crimes he committed. Plus your testimony about Vittorio trying to legitimize operations." Isabella paused. "They're offering a deal. Immunity for testimony against corrupt officials in Dante's network." Natalie's heart leapt. "Vittorio will take it?" "If you convince him. He doesn't want you anywhere near a courtroom. Says it's too dangerous. Then I'll have to change his mind. The meeting at the Federal Detention Center was tense. Vittorio looked thinner, harder, wearing an orange jumpsuit that should have diminished him but somehow didn't. When he saw Natalie's small baby bump, barely visible but unmistakable to him, his eyes went molten. "You shouldn't be here," he said through the glass partition. "Where else would I be?" She pressed her palm to the barrier. "Your daughter needs her father." "Daughter? I don't know yet, but I feel like she's a girl." Natalie smiled. "Sophia Emilia, if that's okay with you." Vittorio's composure shattered. He pressed his palm to the glass opposite hers, tears sliding down his face unchecked. "You'd name her after them. They made you capable of love. This baby is proof that capacity survived." She leaned closer. "But she needs you here, not in prison. Take the deal, Vittorio. Testify. Burn down the corrupt system Dante built and come home to us." "It's not that simple." "It is exactly that simple. You choose us or you choose pride." "I've spent 3 months dismantling your criminal operations and building something better. The Salvatore name can mean something other than fear, but only if you're here to see it through." He stared at her. This woman who'd walked into his life through violence and stayed through everything that followed. "How did you become so strong?" "You made me strong. Now let me save you the way you saved me." The trial became a media spectacle. Natalie testified, 6 months pregnant by then, painting Vittorio as a man trapped by legacy, manipulated by Dante's long con, attempting to legitimize his operations when betrayal struck. She was compelling, sympathetic, strategic. The prosecution's case crumbled as Dante's documented plans revealed the depth of his frame job. Corrupt FBI agents were exposed, their connections to organized crime laid bare. When the jury returned after 4 days of deliberation, Natalie sat in the gallery with baby Sophia, born early at 7 months, tiny but fighter strong, sleeping against her chest. Not guilty on all counts. Vittorio's eyes found hers across the courtroom. He mouthed, "I love you." She mouthed back, "I know." Freedom tasted like autumn air and possibility. Vittorio held his daughter for the first time on the courthouse steps, cameras flashing, tears streaming down his face. "She's perfect," he breathed. "You're both perfect." "She's impatient," Natalie corrected, "like her father." That night, back at Blackstone Manor, renovated, brighter, filled with Sophia's nursery equipment and normal family chaos, Vittorio finally saw what Natalie had built. Legitimate businesses thriving. Charitable foundations genuinely helping communities. His former soldiers employed in security firms and construction companies. The violence dismantled, the fear replaced with respect earned through fair dealing. "You didn't just save my life," he said, pulling her close as Sophia slept between them. "You saved my soul." "No, you saved yourself. I just showed you the door." They had 2 weeks of peace before Marcus was taken. The call came at midnight. Marcus's roommate, hysterical, saying men in suits had grabbed him outside the library. No demands yet. Just silence. Vittorio went cold and lethal, the old monster surfacing. "Luca Moretti. He's back." "Then we end this," Natalie said, fear and fury burning equally hot. "But we do it my way. No more blood. We use the truth. The truth doesn't stop bullets." "No. But it stops the people firing them." She grabbed her phone. "I have an idea. Trust me." Vittorio searched her face, then nodded. Always. What Natalie did next would either save her brother or destroy everything they'd built. But she'd learned from the best. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon wasn't violence. It was exposure. The warehouse was exactly where Luca said it would be. Abandoned, isolated, the kind of place where screams went unheard. Natalie walked through the entrance with Vittorio at her side, both unarmed, both wired with hidden cameras streaming to every major news outlet in Boston. Marcus knelt in the center of the space, face bruised but alive. Luca Moretti stood behind him, gun pressed to his head, surrounded by 6 armed men. "Finally," Luca sneered. The great Salvatore, brought low by a college kid, Antonio would have loved this. Let him go, Vittorio said calmly. This is between us. Is it? You killed my family, destroyed our operations. I think taking everything you love is fair payment. Natalie stepped forward. Antonio deserved what he got. Luca's attention snapped to her. Careful, sweetheart. He was trafficking children. Natalie's voice carried, clear and strong, broadcasting to thousands. I have bank records, shipping manifests, testimony from 3 survivors. Your cousin wasn't a businessman, Luca. He was a monster. You're lying. Am I? She pulled a tablet from her jacket, held it up. Here's a wire transfer for $50,000 to a trafficking ring in Albania. Antonio's signature. Here's a text confirming delivery of cargo. 12 girls, ages 8 to 14. Want me to continue? Luca's face went white. Around him, his men shifted uncomfortably. She's fabricating evidence, Luca snarled, but doubt crept into his voice. I'm not. Vittorio's voice was steel wrapped in silk. I've known for years what Antonio was. So did everyone in our world. We tolerated it because he was useful. But he crossed a line when he came after my family. You killed him for power. I killed him because he was rabid, because he'd have destroyed us all eventually. Vittorio took another step forward. And because men like him don't deserve mercy. The warehouse doors burst open. Not with police, with reporters, cameras, federal agents, all summoned by the live stream Natalie had orchestrated. Luca spun, realizing too late he'd been outmaneuvered. His men lowered their weapons, unwilling to murder a hostage on camera in front of witnesses. It's over, Luca, Natalie said quietly. You can die defending a pedophile's honor, or you can surrender and live. Choose. For one terrible moment, Luca's finger tightened on the trigger. Then his lieutenant, a man named Carlo, stepped forward. Boss, my daughter is 8. If what she's saying about Antonio is true. He lowered his weapon. I'm done. One by one, Luca's men stood down. Luca himself collapsed, gun clattering to the concrete. He was family. Family doesn't excuse evil, Vittorio said, no triumph in his voice, only exhaustion. It never did. Federal agents arrested Luca while paramedics checked Marcus. Natalie rushed to her brother, pulling him into a fierce hug. I'm okay, Marcus whispered. Scared shitless, but okay. Language, she said, laughing through tears. Vittorio watched the scene, something settling in his expression. When the authorities finished processing the scene and released them, he gathered Natalie and Marcus both, one arm around each. Let's go home. Home was chaos. Isabella had watched Sofia, and the baby was screaming for her mother. Natalie took her daughter gratefully, breathing in that perfect baby smell, grounding herself in what mattered. Marcus stared around the manor with wide eyes. This is where you've been living? It's complicated, Natalie said. That's an understatement. But Marcus smiled. You seem happy, though. Different. Stronger. I am. She glanced at Vittorio, who was giving orders to ensure every trafficking victim in Antonio's files received help and protection. I found something worth fighting for. That night, after Marcus was settled in a guest room and Sofia finally slept, Natalie found Vittorio in his study. He stood before the window, watching darkness settle over the estate. You did the impossible today, he said without turning. You ended a blood feud without bloodshed, exposed corruption, saved your brother, all while protecting everyone involved. We did it, together. He turned then, and his expression stole her breath. Raw love, profound gratitude, bone-deep relief. Marry me. Natalie blinked. What? Marry me, he repeated, crossing to her, taking her hands. Not because of Sofia, not because of obligation. Because you're the only person who's ever seen all of me, the monster and the man, and loved both. Because you make me want to be better. Because I can't imagine a single day without you. Vittorio, I'm not asking you to love my world. I'm asking you to help me build a new one. One where Sofia grows up safe. Where Marcus finishes school without fear. where we honor Sophia and Amelia's memory by being the family they'd want us to be. Tears blurred Natalie's vision. You're supposed to get on one knee. He dropped immediately, pulling a ring from his pocket. Vintage, elegant, exactly her style. Natalie Davis, will you marry me? She thought of the terrified waitress who'd slapped a mob boss. Thought of everything they'd survived, bullets and betrayal, grief and growth. Thought of the impossible, improbable love that had grown in the darkest soil. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. He slid the ring on her finger and kissed her like a man who'd finally found salvation. Outside, Boston glittered with possibility. And inside, Blackstone Manor, a family was being born. Not perfect. Not simple. But real. Finally, beautifully real. 1 year later, Blackstone Manor blazed with light and laughter. The charity gala for Isabella's youth center filled every room with Boston's elite. But this time, the atmosphere felt different, genuine. The money raised tonight would actually help kids escape the cycles of violence and poverty that had defined too many lives. Natalie moved through the crowd in an emerald gown. Sophia balanced on her hip. At 18 months, their daughter had Vittorio's dark hair and her stubborn determination, constantly wriggling to be set down. She's relentless, Mara laughed, appearing beside them. Her mother stood at her side, healthy and beaming, cancer in remission for 8 months now. Wonder where she gets that, Natalie said dryly. Mara had returned to Boston 6 months ago, using the diamonds Vittorio had given her to open a small restaurant in the North End. It was thriving, authentic Italian cuisine with a warm family atmosphere that had locals lined up around the block. Thank you, Mara said softly, squeezing Natalie's hand. For everything. For being crazy enough to slap a mob boss for me. Best decision I ever made. Natalie spotted Vittorio across the room, deep in conversation with Senator Bradley, who'd quietly resigned after that first gala and now volunteered at a homeless shelter. Their eyes met and Vittorio smiled, the expression transforming his face. Marcus appeared, college graduation behind him, law school ahead. Your husband is terrifying even when he's being charitable. That investor practically wet himself. Vittorio's cultivating a new reputation. Takes time. Natalie shifted Sophia to her other hip. How's the internship? Amazing. The public defender's office is exactly where I want to be. Marcus's expression grew serious. Because of you, Nat. You showed me what real strength looks like. Before she could respond, Isabella clinked a glass, calling for attention. The crowd quieted as she took the small stage set up near the grand staircase. Thank you all for coming tonight. Your generosity will change lives. I know because this foundation changed mine. She gestured to Vittorio and Natalie. My brother built an empire on fear, but the woman who loved him enough to show him another way, she built something better. A legacy of hope instead of violence. Let's celebrate that. Applause filled the space. Natalie felt heat rise to her cheeks as Vittorio crossed to her, taking Sophia with practiced ease. Speech, someone called. Natalie shook her head, but Vittorio leaned close. They want to hear from the woman who transformed the Salvatore name. Give them something real. She took a breath and stepped forward, accepting the microphone from Isabella. I'm not good at speeches, she began. A year and a half ago, I was working 3 jobs, exhausted, angry at a world that seemed designed to crush people like me. Then I did something incredibly stupid. I slapped the most dangerous man in Boston because he threatened my friend. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Vittorio should have killed me. Instead, he saw something he'd lost. Authenticity. Someone who acted from the heart instead of calculation. And I saw something in him that everyone else missed. A man capable of extraordinary love who'd forgotten how to access it. Her gaze found Vittorio's. Sophia played with his bow tie, oblivious to the moment's weight. We saved each other, not through violence or power plays, but through choosing differently, choosing honesty over deception, choosing growth over comfort, choosing love over fear. She paused. The money you've donated tonight? It gives other people that same choice, a way out of cycles that seem unbreakable. Thank you for believing that change is possible. We're living proof. The applause was thunderous. Natalie handed back the microphone. suddenly desperate for air. She slipped through the crowd to the balcony where this journey had shifted course a year ago. Vittorio found her there moments later, Sofia asleep against his shoulder. "That was perfect," he murmured. "I meant every word." Natalie leaned against him. "Do you ever regret it, leaving your old life behind?" "Not once." He shifted Sofia carefully, wrapping his free arm around Natalie. "I regret the years I spent as half a person, dead inside, believing love was weakness. But this? Us? I'd burn every bridge again to have it. Even though you lost power, respect from certain circles, I lost nothing that mattered and gained everything." He kissed her temple. "The families that matter respect what we built. The ones that don't, they're relics of a dying world. Let them fade." Music drifted from inside, a waltz, elegant and timeless. Vittorio handed Sofia to a nearby security guard with explicit instructions, then offered Natalie his hand. "Dance with me." They swayed together on the balcony. The city lights of Boston spread below them like scattered diamonds. This view had once represented everything unattainable to Natalie. Now it was simply home. "I've been thinking," Vittorio said quietly, "about expanding the youth center model. Philadelphia, New York, maybe Chicago. Isabella would oversee it, but we'd fund it entirely. That's ambitious. I spent 20 years building an empire of fear. I'd like to spend the next 20 building something that actually matters." He pulled back to look at her. "With you. Always with you." "Always," she agreed. A commotion inside made them turn. James Henderson, the man from that first gala, stood in the doorway with his attorney, looking uncomfortable in an ill-fitting suit. Vittorio tensed, but Natalie touched his arm. "Wait." Henderson approached slowly. "Mr. Salvatore. Mrs. Salvatore. I wanted to thank you. My daughter's transplant was successful. The hospital told me an anonymous donor covered all costs, including experimental treatments. I know it was you." Vittorio's expression remained neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. And I also know you're the reason Senator Bradley lost his position. The investigation into his charity revealed irregularities." Henderson's eyes shone with tears. "You gave me justice and my daughter's life. I'll never forget that." After he left, Natalie raised an eyebrow. "Anonymous donor?" "I have no idea what he meant." But Vittorio's smile was soft. "Though, if someone wanted to ensure a child received proper medical care, I suppose I'd consider that a worthwhile investment. You're a terrible liar now. I've corrupted you. Completely." He pulled her close again. "And I've never been happier." Inside, the party continued. Laughter and music and the sound of people genuinely enjoying themselves. Sofia woke and demanded her parents with imperious baby shrieks. Marcus argued passionately with a district attorney about criminal justice reform. Mara's mother taught Isabella a traditional Italian recipe on her phone. This was the world they'd built. Not perfect, still complicated, but honest, real. As midnight approached, Vittorio and Natalie stood together in his study, their study, watching the last guests depart. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night?" Natalie asked. "In the restaurant?" "Finally someone real," Vittorio quoted softly. "I thought I meant someone genuine in a world of performers. But you were so much more than that. You were the catalyst for everything real I'd buried. Grief, love, hope, the capacity for change. You didn't just show me reality. You gave me permission to live it. And you gave me strength I didn't know I had. Purpose beyond survival. A family I chose instead of one I lost." She turned in his arms. "We're quite the pair. The best kind. Matched disasters who somehow became each other's salvation." Sofia babbled from her nursery monitor, not quite crying but demanding attention. They smiled at each other, that shared parent moment of exhausted affection. "I'll go," Vittorio said. "We'll both go." They climbed the stairs together, entering the nursery painted with clouds and stars. Sofia stood in her crib, bouncing excitedly when she saw them. "Mama! Dada!" Vittorio lifted her, and Sofia immediately grabbed his nose, giggling. Natalie stroked their daughter's dark curls, thinking of the other Sofia and Amelia, hoping they'd be proud of the family being built in their memory. "Story?" Sofia demanded. They settled into the rocking chair together, Natalie holding Sofia while Vittorio read from a picture book about a brave princess who saved her kingdom not with magic, but with kindness and clever thinking. When Sofia finally fell asleep, they tucked her in carefully, watching the gentle rise and fall of her breathing. "She'll be strong," Vittorio whispered, "like her mother, and kind, like her father became." "I'm not kind, Natalie. I'm just less cruel than I was. That's growth. I'll take it." She laced her fingers through his. "Come to bed. Tomorrow starts early. You have that meeting with the mayor about the waterfront development. Legitimate business. Still feels strange. You'll adjust." In their bedroom, as they prepared for sleep in comfortable domesticity, Natalie caught sight of the photograph on Vittorio's nightstand, the one of Sofia and Amelia he'd given her that first week. Beside it now sat their wedding photo, and a recent one of baby Sofia laughing. Past and present, grief and joy, coexisting. "Do you think they'd approve?" she asked quietly. "Your first family?" Vittorio followed her gaze. "Sofia once told me that love isn't finite, that loving again doesn't diminish what came before. It honors it by proving the heart can survive." I didn't believe her then. He pulled Natalie close. "But I do now. They'd want this for me, for us. They'd want Sofia to grow up in a house filled with love instead of ghosts. Then we'll make sure she does." They held each other in the darkness, two people who'd found each other through violence and chosen to build something gentle. It wasn't the fairy tale either had imagined. It was better, earned through fire, tested by loss, strengthened by choice. In the morning, Natalie would review foundation budgets. Vittorio would negotiate legitimate business deals. Sofia would destroy the living room with her toys. Marcus would call with law school updates. Mara would text photos from her restaurant. Isabella would argue passionately about expanding their programs. Life would be messy and beautiful and complicated and real. But tonight, wrapped in each other's arms, they simply existed. Two broken people who'd become each other's healing. "I love you," Vittorio murmured against her hair. "My salvation, my conscience, my heart." "I love you," Natalie whispered back. "My impossible man, my choice, my home." Outside, Boston slept. Inside Blackstone Manor, the Salvatore family, chosen and built and fiercely protected, did the same. And in that quiet darkness, there was peace. Finally, wonderfully, perfectly real peace. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this one.